In the Quran, the word salat has two different interpretations, either to pray or to send blessings. Now, is that correct? Does the word salat have these two different meanings? The answer is no, it's not correct. The word salat has one meaning and one meaning alone, and I'm going to show you and prove it to you with the Quran. But first of all, open your mind, stay focused, listen carefully, because we're dealing with two different languages and that's difficult to grasp, okay? So it cost me insane study. So listen carefully. We're going to start with the English word prayer. Where does it come from and what is the concept of prayer? The word prayer comes from the Latin word precaria, which means petition, okay? Now, the act of prayer is a religious performance that seeks to establish a connection with God. So one word, prayer, is used for two different things: to make a petition, which is dua, and to establish a connection, which is salat. Okay, now to visualize the concept, this is you, this is God. When you make dua, it is you talking and God listening. But when you do salat, it is two-way traffic. It is you reaching out to God, seeking to establish a connection. This is salat. Connecting, contact, reaching out, establishing the contact. Okay, now where does the concept of prayer comes from? Okay, the first time that we see it in our religious books, that is in Genesis, the first book of the Abrahamic lineage. Okay, so Judaism, Christianity, Islam. Genesis in chapter 4 verse 26, where we see Seth also had a son and he named him Enosh. At that time, people began to call on the name of the Lord. Now, before this passage, all contacts with God were initiated by God. Okay, so God initiated the contact. But now we started initiating the contact. We started calling upon him to establish the contact. And that is how we grew to understand that the concept of prayer is something that we initiate. And that is why we cannot translate salat in the Quran always to pray, because there are instances where it pretty much say God prays upon, and then it's like, no, that's not correct. So let me show you with the Quran. That is in chapter 33 verse 56. Okay, it says, indeed, Allah and his angels, now it comes, Yusalluna Allah al-Nabidi, which is Allah prays, salat, upon the Prophet. Then it continues, O you who believe, Salu alayhim wa salimu taslima. And it again, O you who believe, pray upon the Prophet. Now that we know that salat is to establish a contact, this doesn't make sense, okay? So when you read it like this, indeed, Allah and his angels establish a connection with the Prophet. They contact the Prophet. They establish a connection with the Prophet. O you who believe, contact the Prophet and greet him with peace. So now you see, this verse is not a commandment for us to pray upon the Prophet. It means to contact him. This verse is directed to people in the time of the Prophet, not towards us. Okay? And I can prove it with this, because since salat is to establish a contact and we cannot do it with the Prophet, if it meant that we should invoke blessings upon the Prophet, then that act of doing so is not salat. That is dua. So this is not the only instance where a verse in the Quran is directed only to the people in the time of the Quran. We can see it also in chapter 49, for example, verse 2, where it says, O you who believe, do not raise your voice above the voice of the Prophet. So obviously that's not a verse that is directed to us, but the people in the time of the Prophet. So, okay. Now, back to salat. God doesn't only do salat upon the Prophet or commands believers to do salat upon the Prophet. We can see it in this verse 33:43, where it says, He is the one, that is God, and then it comes in Arabic, Yusalli alaykum, that means He is the one who prays do salat upon you. Now, yusalli is third person masculine singular. That is third person, he, she, masculine, he, singular, God in this case. So he, God. Then, so God, salat, so praise upon, alaykum, which is second person. Second person is you. Okay, so first person is I, second person is you. Second person, plural. So that is towards us, believers, plural. Now read the verse again. God praise upon all of us believers. So we know that that is not about praying, nor about sending blessings. It is God establishes a contact upon the believers. Why? Continue the verse. So that he may bring you out of darkness into light. So here you can see that doing salat is in fact a two-way traffic of you reaching out to God and actually connecting to him, so that he may lead you out of darkness into light. And you can also see it in other verses where God says that through salat he purifies you. Okay, so now another example is in chapter 9 verse 103. So now you can see God doesn't only commands us to do salat upon the Prophet, to connect to the Prophet in the time when he was alive, but he also tells the Prophet to contact us in this verse. Take from their wealth a charity, purifying them, cause them increase by it, and, now it comes, wasalli alayhim, that is, you pray upon them, contact them. Wasalli is second person masculine singular, which is you singular, that is the Prophet Muhammad, imperative. So God commanding the Prophet to pray, do salat upon us. So contact us, connect to us. And then it says, indeed, salataka sakanun. You reaching out to them is a reassurance to them. So now that we know the meaning of salat, which is to establish a connection, either us with God, God with us with the Prophet with us, the God with everyone connecting to each other. I hope you also understand the purpose of doing salat. You know, this is not a thing of like doing a choreography. This is actually establishing a spiritual connection. So if you are worrying with your brain about how many rakas and what to say, and your soul, your ruh, is not involved, you are not establishing the connection. So be careful with that. Like, let go of the preconception that you have of salat. Now, it doesn't mean that I believe that we can do salat whatever way we want. No, there are plenty of indications in the Quran of how we are supposed to perform salat. For example, in chapter 4 verse 102, where we see, when you are among them and you lead for them the prayer, let them stand a group with you, let them take their arms, then when they have prostrated, sujud, let them retract. So actually the act of salat is directly related to doing sujud. Okay, so it's not just any way that we're going to do it. We also see that we have to perform wudu before doing salat. So don't come at me. I know very well what the difference is between doing dua and doing salat. But I'm going to go into more detail about how to perform salat with all the details from the Quran in another video, God willing. So that's it for today. Stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum. Alaikum, plural. So peace be upon you all. Love you. Bye.